They sent me to fix a broken station, but what I found wasn't machinery. It was a silence that screamed, shadows that moved, and a presence that stole not just bodies, but minds. And it was already inside. My name is Kalen Vance, and I'm a maintenance engineer. Or I was. My life had been circuits, schematics, and the satisfying hum of repaired systems. Routine, predictable, safe. So when Command assigned me to Echo Station 7, a remote research outpost at the edge of known space, I didn't think much of it. Routine repairs, Vance. Previous team went dark. Probably a comms relay failure. Standard protocol. Standard. Safe. Predictable. Lies. All of it. The journey was long, the void vast and empty. Echo 7 hung in the black like a forgotten toy, a skeletal framework of interlocking modules, bathed in the cold, indifferent light of a distant, unnamed star. It looked abandoned. It felt dead. My ship, the utility mule Dash, hummed nervously, its automated systems flagging ambient energy fluctuations too subtle for a derelict. My internal monologue, usually composed, felt a faint prickle of unease. Just static. Edge of the sector. Nothing out here. I docked the mule to Echo's main airlock with a soft thud. The comms remained silent. No automated welcome. No distant voices. Just nothing. The airlock hissed open, filling my suit's helmet with the smell of recycled air, faintly metallic, tinged with ozone and something else I couldn't quite place. Stale. Like a house that had been empty for too long. My boot met the cold, grated floor of Echo 7's central corridor. My footsteps echoed, too loud, too sharp, in the profound silence. Ambient sound, a faint, distant hum of the station's life support, punctuated by the occasional drip of condensation. Echo 7, this is Kalen Vance. Maintenance. Respond. I transmitted, my voice flat in my helmet. Only static greeted me. Comms relay is definitely dead. I muttered to myself, trying to sound nonchalant, trying to convince myself. The station was eerily desolate. Lights flickered in distant sections, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to stretch and writhe with a life of their own. Dust motes danced in the sparse illumination, illuminated by the beam of my helmet lamp. There were signs of a sudden, unexplained evacuation. A half-eaten meal on a table in the mess hall. A diagnostic tool left running in a deserted lab. A coffee mug, still warm, in the primary control room, but no one there. No bodies. No signs of struggle. Just gone. My unease intensified, coiling in my gut. Previous team went dark. Not comm relay failure. Something else. The silence here was not the silence of a powered-down station. It was the silence of held breath. A predator's silence. I began my diagnostic sweep, starting with the primary comms array, located in Module B7. The station felt vast, sprawling, each corridor seeming to stretch into an unsettling infinity. Every creak of the aging metal, every distant clatter of something shifting in the darkness, made me jump. My heart hammered against my ribs, too loud in the oppressive quiet. Ambient sound. A sudden, sharp clang of metal, as if a large object fell in a distant module, followed by dead silence. Hello? Anyone there? I transmitted, my voice a little too sharp. Only static answered. My internal monologue, usually so logical, fought against a rising tide of irrational fear. Just the station settling. Old tech. The previous team probably just abandoned ship. Left in a hurry, but they left the coffee warm. No one leaves a warm coffee. As I navigated the labyrinthine corridors, the anomalies became more frequent, more unsettling. Lights would flicker erratically in my path, then stabilize just as I reached them. Doors would slide open a fraction, revealing only darkness, then hiss shut as I approached. Faint, ethereal whispers seemed to drift from empty rooms, just at the edge of my hearing, too indistinct to make out, too pervasive to ignore. Ambient sound, a low, almost subliminal hum, too deep to be the station's systems, resonating in Kalen's bones. My comms, already unreliable, became distorted. My voice, when I transmitted, came back garbled, twisted, sometimes with strange, elongated echoes that didn't sound like me at all. Echo, echo, Keelan, lean. It was chilling. Just atmospheric interference, I muttered, my voice tight. Dead space. Happens. But doubt, insidious and cold, began to creep into my mind, chilling me more than the low station temperature. I finally reached Module B7, the primary comms array. The air here was colder, denser, the bioluminescent warning lights flickering erratically. The console was dark, dead. I plugged in my diagnostic tablet, its screen bathing the cold metal in a stark blue light. Ambient sound, a faint, almost imperceptible scratching sound from inside the wall near Kalen's head. My fingers flew across the holographic keyboard, running diagnostics. The system was dead, not a simple malfunction. It had been systematically purged. The data wiped clean. Too clean. Someone did this, I whispered, my voice raw, the words barely audible over the sudden, violent thumping of my heart. They didn't just leave. They were erased. Then, a sound. Clearer this time. A faint, almost imperceptible click. Directly behind me. My blood ran cold. My breath hitched. I spun, my blaster already in my hand, its targeting laser a trembling red dot in the gloom. Nothing. Only the shadows. But the temperature in the module had dropped precipitously. A cold so profound it burned, settling around me like a shroud. Ambient sound, a low, guttural gurgle, like liquid moving through a constricted pipe, directly behind Kalen, quickly fading. My eyes darted around, searching, straining against the gloom. My paranoia, usually a controlled tool for survival, began to fray at the edges, spiraling into a desperate, internal scream. It's here. It's real. It's unseen. A faint, chilling whisper resonated inside my mind, bypassing my ears, bypassing my comms, speaking directly to my consciousness. You, here, US? My blaster clattered to the floor, my hand trembling uncontrollably. This was impossible. Telepathy? Or some advanced form of neural manipulation? My sanity, already on the brink, threatened to shatter. Who? What are you? I projected, my mental voice a desperate plea. The whisper resonated again, colder, more pervasive, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. We aren't here. Always. It wasn't just physical pursuit. It was psychological warfare. They were in my head. They were the environment. They were the shadows, the silence, the cold. And I was utterly alone, trapped in a nightmare where the enemy didn't just hide. It was the very fabric of my reality, and it was toying with me, savoring my fear. The descent into terror had truly begun. The whisper, cold and alien, burrowed deep into my mind, a persistent echo that twisted my thoughts, distorted my perceptions. You are alone. It hissed, elongated, chilling. The words were not spoken, but felt, resonating in my very bones, a direct assault on my sanity. My internal monologue, a desperate attempt to cling to logic, was a frantic scream against the encroaching madness. No, not alone. Just isolated. This is a trick. A hallucination. Stay calm. But the station itself seemed to conspire against me. Lights flickered with a deliberate rhythm, creating dancing shadows that mimicked impossible movements. Doors would slide open just enough to reveal a glimpse of darkness, then hiss shut before I could process what I'd seen. The temperature would drop suddenly, plummeting to freezing, then surge to oppressive heat, a constant assault on my physical and mental state. Ambient sound, the distant, distorted wail of a siren, abruptly cut short, replaced by static. My comms, a desperate lifeline, became a torment. I tried to hail command, tried to send a distress signal. All I got was static, then warped echoes of my own voice, twisted into monstrous, inhuman tones. Sometimes, a chilling parody of a familiar voice. My sisters. My old captains. Words of encouragement, distorted into mockery. Words of fear, amplified into despair. Hello, Kalen, a voice, impossibly gentle, impossibly, hers dash, whispered in my comm, are you scared? I ripped the comms unit from my suit, my hand shaking violently. It was a trick, a horrifying, insidious trick. They were playing with my memories, exploiting my fears. My profound isolation, once a fact, was now a weapon. The entity's influence became more direct, more personal. I would round a corner, and for a fleeting moment, see a figure in the dim light. A crewmate from the previous team, their face pale, eyes wide with silent terror. Then they would vanish, dissolving into the shadows, leaving behind only the cold dread of their ghostly presence. Ambient sound, a faint, scuttling sound, like something chittenish dragging across metal, from directly above Kalen. I huddled in a maintenance tunnel, a cramped, claustrophobic space, trying to think, trying to formulate a plan. My primary goal was now simple: reach the utility mule dash. My ship. My only way out. I needed to bypass the comms array, override the airlock protocols, and escape this living nightmare. But the entity seemed to anticipate my every move. Pathways I tried to take were suddenly blocked by inexplicable energy fields, or sections of the station would suddenly power down, plunging me into absolute darkness, forcing me to backtrack through winding, unfamiliar corridors. The station itself felt like a sentient trap, its very structure working against me. The whispers intensified, a cacophony of alien voices, a silent chorus of malevolent amusement that echoed inside my head. They weren't just words, they were sensations. Cold, pressure, the feeling of being watched from every shadow, every vent, every crevice. My sanity began to fray. I questioned everything. Was that flicker of light real? Or an illusion? Was that distant clatter a fallen object? Or the creature moving, subtly, silently? Was the cold touch on my skin the station's failing environmental systems? Or the unseen presence brushing past me? I started talking to myself, my voice, raw and hoarse, the only sound that wasn't a distorted echo or a chilling whisper. It's just a malfunction, Kalen. Just a trick of the mind. You're isolated. That's all. But the words sounded hollow, pathetic, even to my own ears. Ambient sound, a low, resonant thrumming, vibrating through the metal deck plates beneath Kalen's feet, gradually increasing in intensity. I found evidence of the previous team. Not bodies, but personal items. A data pad, lying open in a deserted bunk, displaying a frantic, unfinished log entry. Not alone, can't trust, they mimic, inside. The entry ended abruptly, a single, deep scratch mark gouged into the screen. My blood ran cold. They hadn't just disappeared. They had been driven mad, assimilated, consumed. My fear, already profound, escalated into a terrifying, all-consuming despair. This wasn't just a physical threat. It was an assault on my mind, on my very perception of reality. The enemy didn't just hide. It was the environment, or even a part of my own mind. And the most terrifying aspect was the loss of control over reality, the terrifying realization of being utterly alone against an unseen nightmare. My desperation reached new heights. I had to escape, before I lost myself entirely. Before I became just another whisper in the echoing silence of Echo Station 7. The descent into madness was slow, insidious, like acid dripping onto a neural link. The whispers, once faint, now formed a relentless chorus in my mind, alien voices twisting my thoughts, mocking my every move, amplifying my terror. You are ours. They hissed, an elongated, chilling resonance that vibrated in my teeth, in my bones. My internal monologue, a desperate attempt to cling to the fragments of my sanity, was a frantic, whispered argument against the pervasive, unseen presence. They're not real. Just my mind breaking. Just the isolation. But the station continued its torment, a sentient trap, mocking my every attempt at escape. Corridors would twist into impossible geometries, leading me back to where I started. Doors would seal shut just as I reached them, only to hiss open behind me, revealing empty darkness. The flickering lights intensified, creating a strobe-like effect that disoriented my vision, turning every shadow into a lurking threat. Ambient sound, a sudden, sharp intake of breath, incredibly close, but no visible source. Kalen's own terrified gasp. I was constantly on the run, my body aching, raw, fueled by pure adrenaline and the desperate need to reach the utility mule dash. But every pathway I chose, every shortcut I attempted, seemed to be anticipated, thwarted by the entity's pervasive influence. It was toying with me, savoring my fear, enjoying the elaborate game of cat and mouse. Supplies dwindled. My emergency rations, meager to begin with, were gone. Thirst gnawed at my throat. My blaster, now completely useless after attempting to blast through a locked bulkhead, lay discarded, a useless weight. I was unarmed, helpless. The entity's psychological warfare escalated. I would hear my own name whispered from an empty vent, followed by the faint, distinctive jingle of my grandmother's antique music box. A memory I hadn't thought of in years, meticulously recreated, twisted into a chilling mockery. Then, the scent of fresh-baked bread, a comforting aroma from my childhood, would briefly fill a dark, moldering corridor, only to be replaced by the metallic tang of ozone and decay. My sanity was fraying. I started seeing things. Not just fleeting shadows, but solid forms in my peripheral vision, grotesque, shifting figures, melting into the walls before I could focus. I would whip my head around, heart hammering, only to find empty space. Was it real? Or was I finally losing my mind? The lines between reality and illusion had blurred into an indistinguishable nightmare. Ambient sound, a low, rhythmic scratching, like nails on glass, slowly approaching from around a blind corner. I resorted to desperate measures. I tried to overload the station's power grid, hoping to disrupt the entity, to force it into the open. I manually rerouted conduits, bypassed safeties, pouring raw energy into the system. The lights flared, then died, plunging entire sections of the station into absolute darkness. But the whispers intensified, a silent, mocking laughter echoing in the sudden black. My efforts were futile. The station itself felt like an extension of the entity, a vast, complex organism designed to trap and torment me. The profound isolation was suffocating. I spoke to myself constantly, my voice hoarse, desperate, my only companion in the echoing silence. It's not real, Kalen. Don't listen. Don't see. But every word felt like a lie. I found myself in the main research lab, a vast, circular chamber, filled with the ghostly silhouettes of scientific equipment. This was where the previous team conducted their experiments. This was where they vanished. The air was colder here, laden with a sense of lingering dread. And then, I felt it. A presence. Not a whisper this time. Not a vibration. A cold, immense pressure surrounding me, pressing in on all sides, like a physical weight. It was vast, formless, everywhere. The lights in the lab, which had been flickering erratically, suddenly stabilized, glowing with a stark, cold brilliance. And reflected in the polished surfaces of the lab equipment, in the shimmering display screens, I saw it. Not a monster, not a physical form, but a distortion, a ripple in the air, a shifting pattern of light and shadow that seemed to stretch into impossible dimensions, filling the entire lab. It was the entity, vast, shapeless, pervasive. It was the environment. It was the station. And reflected within that shimmering distortion, 1,000 faces. The previous team, their eyes wide with terror. My sister, her face contorted in a silent scream. My old captain, his jaw slack, eyes staring blankly. All trapped, all assimilated, all part of the entity's vast, horrific consciousness. The whispers swelled, a silent, deafening roar in my mind. We are all of them. And soon you too. My heart hammered, a frantic drum against my ribs, ready to burst. My breath hitched, a strangled gasp. The terror was absolute, overwhelming, stripping away all pretense, all sanity. This was the climax, the final confrontation. And the entity was not just physical. It was intellectual. It was existential. It was the absolute, terrifying loss of control over reality. I was cornered, trapped, surrounded by a being that was both nothing and everything. My attempts to escape or fight back had been futile. And now, I faced the horrifying realization that I was utterly alone against an unseen nightmare that sought to consume not just my body, but my very essence. My descent into hell was complete. The most terrifying aspect was not what it could do to me, but what it could make me, what it could take from me without a single sound. And the profound isolation was the only comfort left. The lab, once a chamber of scientific exploration, was now a nexus of existential terror. The air, thick with the entity's formless presence, pressed in on me, a suffocating weight. My internal monologue, stripped of all reason, was a primal, wordless scream against the overwhelming, consuming reality of the unseen nightmare. The thousand faces, reflected in the polished surfaces of the lab, writhed in silent agony, their eyes, once vibrant with life, now blank with the horror of assimilation. They were the entity's trophies, its devoured consciousnesses. The whispers intensified, a silent, deafening roar within my mind. You are ours now. The words were not felt, but experienced, a pure invasive thought resonating in the very core of my being, unraveling the last threads of my sanity. My identity, my memories, my very sense of self, felt stretched, pulled thin, threatening to snap and dissolve into the entity's boundless, horrific collective. Ambient sound, a low, resonant, almost melodic hum, slowly building in intensity, overlaid with sporadic, high-pitched clicks. I staggered backward, my body convulsing, my hands clawing at my head as if to rip the entity's presence from my mind. The realization was a cold, sharp blade to my soul. It wasn't just in the station. It was inside me, infiltrating my thoughts, twisting my perceptions, corroding my sanity from within. The fear of being consumed, of becoming another voiceless face in its horrifying tapestry of assimilated minds, was absolute. My eyes, wide with unseeing terror, darted frantically around the lab, searching for an escape, a weapon, anything. But there was nothing. Only the shimmering distortion that was the entity, filling every inch of the space, a living, breathing void that devoured all. I saw the main power conduit, thick as my torso, snaking across the lab floor, pulsating with a dangerous, unstable energy. It led directly to the station's reactor core. A desperate, suicidal gamble. If I could overload it, if I could force a catastrophic meltdown, it would destroy the station. It would destroy me dash. But it would also destroy it dash. Or, at least, drive it out. A final, desperate act of defiance against the ultimate assimilation. The entity's whispers became a seductive purr, flowing through my thoughts, showing me visions of peace. Not the harsh, chaotic reality of my life, but a serene, tranquil existence. My fears, my losses, my loneliness, all dissolved. My sister's face, smiling, healthy. My old captain commending my work. Perfect, idealized memories, offered as a temptation to surrender, to merge into their blissful, terrifying unity. Surrender. Kalen. The whisper coaxed, gentle as a lover's touch, yet utterly chilling in its intent. Become one with us. No more pain. Only peace. But the image of the thousand tortured faces in the distortion, their silent screams echoing in my fragmented mind, solidified my resolve. This was not peace. This was oblivion. This was the ultimate loss of self. With a guttural cry, raw and animalistic, I lunged towards the power conduit. My body, ravaged by exhaustion and psychological torment, screamed in protest, but my will was unyielding. The entity reacted, its formless presence solidifying, pushing back, a crushing weight that threatened to pin me to the floor. The whispers intensified to a deafening shriek, a cacophony of alien voices that tried to tear my mind apart. My hands, trembling, clawed at the conduit's access panel, my fingers raw, bleeding against the cold metal. The entity fought back, distorting my vision, filling my mind with searing pain, making the conduit shimmer and writhe like a living serpent. Stop, futile. The whispers raged, laced with something akin to fury, or perhaps simply a logical assessment of my disruptive defiance. But I pushed through, driven by a primal need to exist. I tore open the access panel, revealing the raw, humming power lines within. The air crackled with immense energy. I felt the heat, the radiation, searing my skin. My last act, a desperate, final choice. With a scream that tore my throat, I plunged my hands into the humming, raw power lines. The pain was immediate, absolute, searing through every nerve ending, burning out my cybernetics, consuming my flesh. My body convulsed, my muscles seizing, as the raw energy coursed through me, a living conduit of pure, uncontained chaos. The entity shrieked, a silent, deafening cry that resonated in my mind, vibrating through the station itself. The shimmering distortion that was its form convulsed, flickering, tearing apart. The thousand faces screamed, then dissolved, vanishing into nothingness. The atmosphere in the lab filled with a cold, desperate roar, as if the very air was being ripped apart. The last thing I saw, before blinding white light consumed everything, was the entity's distortion, tearing, shrinking, attempting to recoil from the immense, uncontained energy. It was fleeing, or being destroyed. Then, oblivion. A profound, silent blackness. The resolution was deeply ambiguous and disturbing. I had triggered a catastrophic overload. The station, Echo 7, would be no more, reduced to a cloud of superheated plasma and shattered debris. And I, Kalen Vance, maintenance engineer, would be with it. My physical body annihilated. But the horror lingered. The whispers of the entity. They had spoken inside my mind. They had played with my memories. They had tried to assimilate me. What if it wasn't confined to the station? What if, in that desperate, final act of connection, it had succeeded, not in full assimilation, but in leaving a piece of itself within me? A lingering echo? A silent infection? Perhaps, as the station exploded, a fragment of its consciousness, a sliver of its pervasive being, had imprinted itself onto my dissolving mind, carried away on the very wave of energy I had unleashed. My escape from Echo 7 was not a clear victory. It was a terrifying uncertainty. Did I escape? Or did I become a new vessel, carrying the unseen nightmare within me, doomed to a life of escalating paranoia, questioning every shadow, every sound, every whisper in my own mind? The horror was in the lasting psychological impact, the profound scarring of my psyche, leaving the audience with an unsettling question about what was truly real. The final, chilling realization that the enemy might not just be out there, but forever within me, the ultimate loss of control over reality. And the profound isolation was my eternal torment. Immersive.